Morning. Today is Friday, April 4th, 2025. It's 10:30. It's the uh, one of our two monthly meetings of the Dryden Public Broadband Committee. This is the first meeting of the month, which means we look back at the previous month with different teams reporting on what they did. I'll also cover a few other things from previous conversations. I'm going to share one of my screens. Let's see. All right, this is the agenda for today. Someone who hasn't talked in the last couple of months like to read the mission? Who's left? Amanda?
Sure. Our mission, Dryden Fiber mission, our mission is to provide a reliable, affordable, high-speed, fiber-based internet access. We offer state-of-the-art technology and unmatched customer service.
How have you're like the front line for all billing at least. You probably communicated with every single customer at least a little bit. How are you experiencing this mission in your day-to-day?
I guess I'm trying to take the customer service to think about how do I want to be treated? Whether that's somebody's behind in the bill and try to say, hey, can you pay me 1 month? We'll do another month later. Whether that's I had a customer that messed up their logins. They had two and used the wrong title for both and got that fixed with them this week. But they said, hey, in your letter, in your email, can you put like the service address so that way people that have more than one site location know which one they're making a login for. And I'm like, oh, and I went and I took a little bit, but I did figure it out. So I don't know,
Nice.
just trying to take those feedbacks because that's what they see. And like, okay, well, if one's having a problem, somebody else is. So
Do we have a lot of customers with more than one account, more than one location?
Yeah, so I have one of our customers has two houses, so they have two accounts.
Oh.
I'm not sure if one's a rental. I'm not quite sure. So
Cool. Good. Thanks.
yep.
I don't think we have anyone new on the call, so we won't spend time on introductions. We will jump right into the monthly report. Let me see if I can adjust this so you can see it a little better. All right, so month of March, third month of the year already, or already into April, the second quarter of the year. Time is flying. This is the executive summary. So it's such a long summary. There's actually 2 slides of the summary slide for this month. First time I think we've had to go into 2 different slides. First is headline: work stoppage has impacted subscriber growth. On February 13th, that Thursday, we terminated our partnership with Hunt and signed a partnership with Vantage as our lead engineer for construction management and engineering of the project. That was on the 13th, but 2 weeks after that, on the 28th, they had a preliminary report and they requested a 10 to 14-day construction stoppage so they could do some deeper evaluation and potential design changes. As of April 2nd, which is now 2 days ago, the estimated restart is still TBD. They are still working through the design, the budget, the timeline. They're focused on MIP, but they're also looking at everything that has started that was non-MIP that still needs to be worked on. There was questions about overall, basically design of the network, the amount of fiber going out, number of strands, and they're doing a complete evaluation of the entire project, both MIP and non-MIP in both Dryden and Caroline. So it's taken a long time. As I put on here, as of April 2nd, when I made this slide, it was still unknown, still TBD on when we would do the restart.
Dave, have they given us any? I mean, they're missing their commitment that they sort of gave to us. Do they have a reason why? Or is it, I mean, does it seem plausible, or are they not putting enough resources on it? They said they could pull in a lot of resources to get this done, and now it's starting to worry me that we're having the same problem.
Me too.
So,
There are
yeah.
4 people in person here in town doing the surveying work. From what we can tell from all the design work that was done by Hunt, almost none of the design work the Hunt did was in person. They sat at a desk using Google Maps, Street View to guess where things were and how things looked. Therefore, when they provided the design documents to Syracuse Utilities, and Scott's here, or Sean's here, Sean can probably give you about 50 different anecdotes. Hunt would say use these poles, not those, or dig on this side of the road, not that side. And the reality is you could never dig on one side of the road than the other, as that looked like it was flat from a Google Earth view.
Mm-hmm.
In reality, there are hills and creeks and runoff and driveways and other things that you would get in person. So my take is the project started back in 2019, 2020, groundbreaking 2022. It took 2.5 years of not doing anything in person to get started. And now Vantage is doing a complete restart in person on the ground. So that way, when we build this, we have a strong foundation versus trying to pick up where we left off and just move right over. I think every time that I wouldn't say like every mile they go, they find another issue, but they found a number of substantial issues in the design packages that they want to fix. They're also working on identifying where the future growth is in the town, from what the roads look like, where the apartments are, where the potential structures would be, to make sure we have enough fiber going out, so we don't have to come back and rebuild, especially where further away from the ring, where there might be future development. We don't want to get to a place where, oh great, now I have to run all new fiber from the ring all the way out 2, 3, 4, 5 miles to points on the network. So substantial and widespread issues with design and implementation of design. There have been no new green zone parcels since the end of February, when we did those parcels at the western side of the village of Dryden. There's audits underway with existing outside plant, as well as an audit of the network, the timeline, the schedule, the total budget, and permitting.
So have they completed the audit piece or yet, or have they completed any of the things? I mean, sounds like all of it seems to be up in the air. That's what's sort of a little worrisome.
Yeah, I mean, we're also looking at the MIP project and auditing that project. There were a number of locations, both in Dryden and in Caroline, that were not considered by Hunt, even though they were stated to New York State, Dryden Fiber will reach those locations, but there was no plan. There's like literally in the design documents, there's no pathway, there's no permit, and there's no poles, and there's no DOT permits to get to these locations. So before we move forward with the GDA, now this is not quite changing the subject, but we're looking at all these 7 different locations to figure out, can we get there? How much is it actually going to cost to get there? Is there enough in the MIP budget that they awarded to us to reach and to complete the project as it was proposed? Or do we need more money, or do we need to ask for fewer houses? That's also taking up time as part of this entire audit process. Is MIP is coming from us from the other direction of, we need you to get started, we need you to get the permits going, we need to start construction, because you have to get this entire thing done for New York by 12/31/26. And as you'll see, that's now we're only down to 20 months, 21 months. So as much as they're working on this audit, they're also auditing the budget and the timeline, the equipment, and the network design of the entire MIP project. I'd like to say it would be done by April 1st. Now we've gone by that deadline. They did have a commitment to me yesterday that they would have something to me by last night. I haven't seen that yet. I think I forwarded that to the committee this morning. I have a call with them every Wednesday from like 1:30 to 2:30, but it actually has gone from 1:30 to 3:30. It's almost 2 hours just to get caught up on all these things. There are many issues. You also know a little bit about the part of town that we've removed from the map that also has to be configured into the design plan, and more work for them to do to help with the re-engineering and reworking that. So it's just a substantial amount of cleanup. What they told me on February 28th is they opened the conversation with, you have a mess on your hands. What your prior provider, who did not have the capacity to do a project this big, did for you, did to you, with you, for you, is causing you to have substantial foundational issues with the project. It can be reworked, redesigned, and recalculated across the board.
And is there any way we can start a piece of the thing so we can get them started to hang more cable and that kind of stuff, or really we need it all done? I mean, that's.
I think we're close. I think the thing is, like, there's a lot of people on the ground. There's people back the back office doing things on planning and the network design and budgeting. If I just look at a couple different places, one is in permitting for the MIP project. 2 of those permits were taken off hold on Wednesday to Labella to go and finish. As soon as those permits are cleared through Labella and NYSEG Avant Grid, they'll move over to electrical make ready. And once electrical make ready is done, we can go to construction. So 2 of the permits are now released from their hold and are moving forward.
So they evaluated what poles, and they've redone it at the correct number of poles for 2 of the MIP ones. Okay. And what we have 12 MIP, is that vaguely right? We got 12 sets of permits that we're going to need for them.
No, there's a lot more. There's 41 total permits in the project.
Yeah.
12 were pre-MIP, although they have some overlap with MIP just in Dryden. I believe 18 are in Caroline, and the other 11 are Dryden MIP, or 100% Dryden MIP that came up after the MIP project started, and that's mostly in the southern half of Dryden. So they have to work through. So what we learned from the method that Hunt followed was, we will just request permits for every single telephone pole, every utility pole in the town of Caroline for MIP, and for many, 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 I don't know if all, but many poles in town of Dryden for the project, MIP and non-MIP. They just we're going to request permits for all these poles. Once we receive the permit surveys and the work that's done by Labella, and sometimes work that's done by NYSEG, then we'll make an evaluation about which ones we actually need. And then we'll be able to move what we need to electrical make ready. And then they go to construction. According to both Vantage and Labella, this is not the method that any engineering firm in this space ever does anywhere in New York, in the United States. Like, no one does it this way. This is part of the limited experience and capacity of Hunt, which was like, it'll be easier for us to say, like, Control A, select all, request every single permit, every single pole. Vantage is like, we're going to go through and get on the road and look at every pole and say, these are the ones we need, these are the ones we don't need. That takes time. And they've done it for 2 of the permits in Dryden to say, these are the exact poles we need for this permit to go forward. We're not going to spend more money on permits that we don't need.
Yeah.
All in all, roughly 24% of poles applied for in Caroline have been removed from the project by Hunt right before they left. They're like, oh, we don't actually need these poles. 24% of the poles. And I believe 23% of the poles applied for in the town of Dryden. It was over 1,000 poles that were permitted, surveyed, work was completed. The total of this was over $150,000 and work on telephone poles that we'll never use. Utility poles we'll never use. Vantage doesn't want to do that again. Feel like this is not the way to run a business. We don't make those mistakes. In a poll application, you're limited to 150 polls. Through our first 12 applications, we averaged 24 polls per application that we did not need. General average is 1 or 2. Like, yeah, maybe there's a corner where we don't actually need a poll, but we requested it, thought we needed it. Over 20% of the polls that Hunt requested were not needed for the project across both towns. So substantial amount of, time savings by never going on the ground to do the surveying, huge amount of financial expense by doing all this survey work from Labella to find out that we don't need those polls at all. Amanda and I put a lot of trust in Hunt to do the job and provide us with the invoices and make sure they were labeled MIP and non-MIP, and trust that they were following the budget, the timeline, and getting things done. We did not have the skill set until Vantage was here to look at these much deeper and be like, what is going on? We put too much trust in the team from the previous engineering firm. I hope I have an answer by next Friday with where we are. So that's like one of the angles. The other is there's a number of roads, like Hanford Road is closed, part of Route 366 between Varna and NYSEG on the south side of 366 is close, part of Yellow Barn. Some of those are as easy as saying, do we have the right number of ports in the MST that's going in that neighborhood?
Yeah.
Based on what we found so far and for what's already been built, we know that the count of ports needed for neighborhoods was not considered accurately. The reason we know that is Mont Road has a trailer park with 24 units, and out in front of it on the pole is one MST with 8 ports. That's it. That's what was designed by Hunt. So taking the Hunt plan and handing it to Lightspeed to do the splicing can open us to further gaps where we have to then send Lightspeed back to do another device. So now what's going to happen on Mont Road? We need to have 3 times as many ports to service that community.
When we discussed this with Hunt, they definitely, I can remember Ryan talking about, they're trying to make a little bit of extra in these, but not too much. So they were definitely aware of the issue of trying to right size it. So, but because we did ask those questions. So.
All I can say is they were scrambling to keep up with everything that we were doing in our project. And then they signed on to Livingston County, which is 2.5 times bigger, with the same size team. Like they're just way over their head, way under capacity. They just didn't have the resources. And now we're seeing what the resources are needed for a project like this. Like substantial. So on those stretches where we're close, that are in the yellow, that are where the strand and fiber is already there, we still have to evaluate the design to make sure we have enough ports in the NSTs for today and for tomorrow before we go and start to splice them all into the network. And that means looking at every single mile, every single foot, every house, every parcel. Mark Whitmer.
Dave, Vantage still feels confident about getting the project done by the end of next year. Is that true?
They were pretty confident until about mid-March. I think they've probably become less confident overall. Also, we were like, we want to finish everything that's in the map that's yellow and blue and orange by the end of next year. because through our partnership with Hunt, we committed to the community that everything in yellow and blue would be done ultimately by June 30th of 2025, which is less than 3 months away. And we'd have everything in orange done by the end of next year. Vantage hasn't provided direct feedback yet. Their focus right now is getting everything in orange done because we have to do it for the grant by the end of next year. In the blue and yellow zones on the map, it's a mix of MIP and non-MIP addresses that were underway last June as MIP was starting, with the optimistic ambition that we would reach all those before the end of last year in yellow and before June 30th of this year for the blue. But now, like, I don't have the detail yet to help make the decision of, do we focus on the yellow and blue and risk hitting the orange state-funded pieces? Or do we just focus on the orange and push everything in yellow and blue out until 2027? Because those are not state-funded. I don't have enough information yet to make that call.
And so the MIP grant, is there any flexibility, or can we get flexibility from them? Do we know? I mean,
so far there have been 3 cases where we went back to them and said we need more resources. One was when BEAD funding came out last September. They identified there were 61 locations in the town of Dryden that were not covered by our application to MIP. We said, well, we don't want another ISP taking those 61 addresses and getting funding through BEAD to reach them. We should be able to reach them through our project. Can we get more money? And they said, use your contingency fund to pay for that. We said, we'll try to do that. And then we wondered how we missed these 61, and it appears that there was an issue with the way the prior engineering firm assessed the locations, where if they weren't within 500 feet of the right of way, they did not include them in the list of locations we applied for. They didn't like flag them as really unserved and underserved. So that was the first issue. They said, use your contingency fund. The second was with all the tariffs and the pricing changes, we estimate somewhere between a 7 and 10% increase in overall cost of the project just on the materials. And they said, we'll just take it from the contingency. And there was a third one. We found some long distance places that Hunt had not designed for. They said, well, just use contingency. So they're basically saying, like, use that 10% contingency fund to pay for everything.
and what about timing? Do we know if there's any flexibility about that? And what if we're got 80% of it? Are they gonna not fund us for the rest of it if we don't?
The GDA reads that way. Now, I had a call, Amanda joined me on a call on Wednesday with the executive directors of, I think, 13 of the other 15 recipients. And I think we're in first place as far as production. We're the most done, and we're extremely at risk of finishing on time and on budget. Most of these projects are in National Grid area, not NYSEG. National Grid permits take 300 to 400 days to get approved. Ours are about 200 days. So even if they applied for every permit last summer, you're talking about all the way through until this October just for permitting to be finished before electrical make ready and construction starts. These are some projects with 500 to 1,000 miles of fiber. We only have 150. So I imagine there are going to be some projects that ask for extensions of time, and possibly including ours.
But Dave, are we like, they were very specific when we started, everything had to be done. Like, do we think CAO is gonna have some flexibility, or is it gonna be, we just don't know right now? Or what have you gotten the feeling on for that?
No, the answer is no. Right now, the feeling right now is no. It feels like there is already, they didn't want to say this, and I'll say this to everyone who's here because this is basically public. There's an issue with the federal government paying bills right now, like pulling back on funding. This project does not go through the Department of Commerce, which is where the BEAD project went. And BEAD is now halted, ended on hold through the Commerce Department. This project is funded through the Treasury Department, which they say is still functioning in a way that we will get funded. They've asked for the first tranche, the first quarter, because we have 4 payments, 4 reimbursement payments, just like every other recipient. They've already requested Treasury for the first quarter of those, which I think is about $45 million. New York State is going to request that from Treasury, so they have it on hand. So the first quarter of payments will have cash in New York to pay those projects. Soon after, they'll ask for the next quarter of the funds from Treasury. It's hard to tell what will happen when they request the 3rd and 4th tranche for New York State to receive the money to then reimburse back to us.
So when can we start? I know we've already done MIP work. We've delivered to some customers, I believe, already. And when will we get have we put in to get our funding for those? And have we received any funding from that? Or is that not how it works?
So it's a reimbursement grant where there are 2 components. One is a spending component. You have to spend everything ahead of time. You have to pay all those invoices. And then we have to share the invoices with New York and say, here's the total, it's $10 million project. Here's $2.5 million of invoices. We paid 10% of it. We want reimbursement for the other 90% of that $2.5 million. In addition, we've also achieved these specific project milestones, which include design documents. And now that we're doing a redesign, we can't hit that milestone until the redesign is completed. On top of that, the GDA has these 7 locations, of which each of them has their own particular financial challenge to reach that were not accounted for in the original project plan and budget from Hunt. So before we sign off and say we're going to reach all of these locations, including these 7, we either need more funding or we need to have them removed from the project, because we will not be able to reach them in this $10 million project. So we haven't even signed the GDA, the grant disbursement agreement, that would allow us to submit reimbursements, because there are issues with the GDA regarding the parcels included. The final piece is, due to the substantial amount of work on this project, Vantage is assessing the total budget. What can we actually get done for $9.9 million, of which $8.9 million is the grant? Can we achieve? Is given the fact that our prior engineering firm was off on almost every part of the project, how they designed it, how they surveyed it, how they networked it, how they did everything, we have to question that did they do the budgeting correctly? The first take from Vantage was that the pricing methodology was far lower than they've seen anywhere else in the United States, the cost per mile.
So Dave, would the solution there be for the GDA to say, we're just going to do less for the present amount, or to ask for an increase?
Yeah, so I think there's 3 options. One is, we can reach what you have asked us to reach, but we need more money. Here's how much more we need. Or we can say, with this money that you've given us, we can reach fewer than we originally expected. Or we can try to find some other creative way to achieve the requirements with what they have for funding. Which I don't really know what that third one is, but you know what? There's some pretty creative people on this call, in this project. And I don't have the price tag. It might come in at, maybe it comes in at 9.8, and we can do it. Maybe it comes in at 10.2, and that includes the contingency. Well, that's still with the contingency, we can make that work. I don't know if it's going to be 12 million or 15 or 6. I just don't know.
Yeah.
They're assessing it. It's substantial. I think we're pretty creative. I think we're going to find a way to do it and do it on time. There's some smart people working on this now. This is a big project, and maybe we've as slow as it has been so far. Maybe we've seen what happens when you rush through things.
I agree with that. From what you said earlier about the grant funds being with Treasury, do we have surety of the funding or not?
As sure as the Connect All office and their team can be about this,
Okay.
without them, like, they're not bashing the BEAD project or BEAD funding or the Commerce Department. They're like, the money's there for us, like, because it was from a prior funding act than the infrastructure bill. The money is allotted differently in Treasury, so it's more protected because it's older money. It's not from the more recent infrastructure or whatever the other bill was. Dan might know. Dan knows all the names of these. Dan, you're muted.
Inflation Reduction Act.
Inflation.
But yeah, there was 42 billion in the infrastructure law, or the bipartisan infrastructure law. That's where the big chunk is, and we're lucky we're not part of that.
Okay. That's good to know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we get paid to jump to conclusions about what's going on in the federal government right now. We just have to do what we can do to get this up and running and going and make sure the GDA is something we can reach. I don't think it makes sense. I think it would be hard for me to offer the GDA to the town boards and say, sign this, if the budget is 12 million and we have no way to reach it on that timeline. Like, that would not be, I think I would not be doing my job if I said that to the town boards. Like, we can do this in the next 21 months. Like, if we can't, like, we have to have a realistic GDA to sign. And right now it's questionable.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's what's rattling around in my head. If that, how our project would be impacted as far as rollout, depending on that funding. So
yeah, there's a lot of unknowns. I think we know most of the unknowns, but we don't
okay, understood.
We don't have the answers to them yet. Probably some also unknown unknowns that we will find in the coming weeks and months.
Yep.
Our lead for Vantage is on PTO today. I believe he's back. He has a couple of other people on his team, Ray and Carmen, who are helping out. I'll get together with them Wednesday, but prior to that, they do owe me some response on a few things. When I get those, I'll share those with you. Let me cover a few more things on this in the next slide, and then we can talk about other parts of what happened this month. We are at 1,729 parcels, 29.6% of the town. We have now 364 paying customers, so we did add 38 new installations in the month of March. Actually, it was 40 installs. We did lose 2 customers. So we're at a net 38 gain in March with 40 installations. We did have an outage back on March 16th during that windstorm that Sunday afternoon. We lost service for about 115 minutes. And another highlight of the month, although it was yesterday, it was before this report, Tracy and I went door to door in the village of Dryden and visited 25 businesses. Very positive reception. A few of them had no idea that we were who we were, which was neat, I guess, to find out people still didn't know. People were like, I've been thinking about this, but this might be the push I need to sign up. One business we went to, the owner of the business was working with a customer. And when we dropped in, the customer said, "Oh, I'm a Dryden Fiber customer. You should use it too." So it was great to have one of our customers selling to one of our potential business customers. Tracy might have some more details in his report, but it was good to get out there and walk up and down the sidewalks in the village of Dryden and talk to the business owners and the organizations. We did participate in the Community Connections event last Saturday. Probably spoke to about 25 or 30 residents in the 2 hours. Arthur and Graham were there. Jason and Tony were in and out of the booth, helping out, answering questions. We had a map. We had the postcards so people could take them with them. Talked about different parcels. Some people were in the green, talked to us. Some people were in the yellow, some current customers. So I think it was a good way to get out there and talk to people and talk about what we have available today. We did remove those 35 locations from the network on Baker Hill Road and part of Mount Pleasant. This directly impacts 2 customers. One of them should be moving over to Point today. The other one, I don't have an update on when that's going to be scheduled to be moved over. Once it's moved over, we will remove our equipment from that part of the network, which is owned by Point Broadband. All right, this next one, it's hour to hour. Amanda might know today. We've terminated our first subscriber for lack of payment. We turned off their service, then they paid. We turned it back on, then the payment didn't make it. Then we turned it back off. I think it's back on. Where are we at now?
Just yesterday, he called. He paid. Payment went through. We turned the service back on. He obviously was talking to Allison yesterday, and he said to her, like, "Yep, I know I have to pay again in a week." I said, "Yeah." So we're going to talk to him again at the end of next week and say, "Can you pay another one?" But we do have an automatic payment method in his account. But obviously, if there's no money in the account or it's declined, then there's nothing we can do. So I will say we now have 2 more that we're going after within the next week. Basically, either pay or your service is getting turned off by the middle of the month. So most people are very responsive. It's these few oddballs that you just kind of have to follow up on. So we're learning.
Well, first, we don't refer to them as oddballs.
Oh, true.
So
Unusual customers that are different from others. Let's say it that way, not in a bad way. Just they said that they're the outliers. Is that better?
Overall, we have about 360 customers, and 1 or 2 or 3 that makes up less than 1% that are having trouble paying on time, which I think is probably pretty good for who we are and the size that we are right now.
Amanda, is that just because they space it out?
You mean in terms of that they
just don't realize that it's time for them to pay for some reason, or what's going on?
Everybody kind of has their own reasons. One of the ones that we've been trying to reach out to, I can tell they're not opening the email. Like our system will tell us if they open it. So they haven't even opened the email, which makes me go, "Are you even getting it?" But Allison's called and left some voice messages like by phone. So we'll check again. I probably should need to check with Integrity, just make sure, is their service even on? Are they using it? Just to ensure, like, is there something else going on? So yeah, it's not a usual situation, but we're learning to handle them as they come up so they don't get too far out.
Great. Thanks.
Amanda, do they need a phone call?
Allison's taking care of it, Tracy.
Okay.
But thank you.
Yep.
We did launch the updated map on drydenfiber.com. It's the new map. It's on the Vantage server. Just a different view of the map, pastel colors. A little bit easier to see some of the buildings. So you should take a look at that if you haven't already. And then coming up, weekly meetings with Vantage are on Wednesdays, although I do talk to them probably 3 or 4 times a week. There's also work on MDU planning. So across from everything else we're already doing, we have identified 8 multi-dwelling units. And I think 6 of them are trailer parks and 2 of them are apartment buildings that need some additional support on having enough ports or bringing the right devices or right methods to get in there. So across all the other priorities that they're dealing with, Vantage is also supporting us in how we actually service these green zone MDUs. And then reach the other MDUs that are borderline green zone, that are in the yellow zone. Okay, that was the summary, and that was 40 minutes. Any questions before we go into some of the details? One of the many things that I'm working with Vantage on is to revise the map on drydenfiber.com with a clearer picture of what it looks like. I saw Rick mentioned in the chat for this meeting regarding what things in the yellow look like. At this point, we can't project timelines for much of any of it. All we know is that the orange pieces, which include some of the yellow and blue, are required for MIP, which means they're required by 12/31/26. We did not have yellow and blue broken out to yellow and blue MIP versus non-MIP. The assumption at the time of June 30th last year, we made that update, was that everything in yellow and blue would be full steam ahead and done by the end of the year before MIP permits even started to get processed and start working on the orange zone south of Route 13, heading to Caroline. But since the work was just so far behind, now it's all stacked up on top of each other, and it's hard to tell of the yellow and blue what parts are required for MIP, which parts are not. So one of the requests is to revise and update the drydenfiber.com map to show what is the realistic look like for 3, 6, 12, 18 months down the road. As of right now, it's hard to tell what colors are on there that will remain the colors around, and which ones will turn green and when. I can confidently say this as we move on to the next part of the meeting. There was no plan prior to February 13th to finish this project. What our previous engineering firm had was nothing. They had a map. They were like, we're going to build this map, eventually get done, maybe by 2030. There was no plan. We are on a much different track than we were. It might have looked like we were inching along. That was luck. We're no longer relying on luck. We are a little behind on our goals for the year, as you can imagine. We are a net difference of 68 from our goal. We actually had 28 new in March, 42 in February. We were aiming for 65 each of those months. So we're now running a little bit of a deficit from where we thought we would be at this point. Which is, understandable. You don't do enough each month. We're gonna end the year with lower numbers than we thought we were gonna have. The only update on this scorecard is the number of months to go is still 21 out of 30, so we're at 70% time left. So as much as we've eaten through a lot of time, it feels like we're running out of time. We still have 70% of the project time left to go in this. Vantage has said for a project that is this size, 140 miles, that should be done in one construction season. Now, we're going to find out if that construction season is 2025 or 2026, but the feeling is this is not 3 or 4 or 5 years of construction seasons to do this. We've also been pretty fortunate the last year or two that Sean and his team have been able to work very long construction seasons, 10, 11 months a year. So there's a lot of time left on the calendar. Matt, do you want to touch on the customer base?
Yeah, so we have 30 installs in the month of March. The two loss of customers were due to the Point Broadband customers. So that we had 2 that we no longer bill in the month starting in April. No change in commercial, but it sounds like from meetings yesterday that will change for next month. Any questions?
Right. Was that a hand?
Hey,
Mark?
Amanda, I just, have we had customers switch from other providers like Point to Trident Fiber the other way? I presume we have.
I don't know for Point. I know from Spectrum, we've had quite a few of those, possibly from Point, but I don't have that information.
Okay, just curious. Thanks.
And the loss to Point was nothing that we could control. It was
Right.
something was done wrong to start with. So
All right, thanks, Amanda. Address availability. I had those 56 that we added back in the western side of the village of Dryden, Goodrich, and Hilton, and a few other roads up there. As I mentioned earlier, all the construction placing is on hold pending the audit and potential redesign. And then continuing audit assessment, hopefully doing this kickoff with construction teams, Syracuse Utilities and Lightspeed next week or the week after. So not a lot of changes on construction as of right now. Installations. Tracy, you want to cover these? I don't know if there's any difference here except for projections for April.
No, I think we did 30. I think Amanda had 29 because there was one that came in the last day of the month. She may not have included it, but we did a total of 30 last month. There, as of the 1st of April, we only have 15 left on the calendar for installation because obviously things have slowed way down. As far as I know, there are no blockers except there's no construction going on. So obviously we can't expand on our installations unless we get some construction. I also wanted to make mention of the fact that we have inventory, like we're ready to go. As soon as we get opportunity, we'll be ready to smoke it.
Awesome, that's good news. We don't want to run into a roadblock because of not having enough materials. Good. All right. Go right to back to Amanda with financials.
Pretty basic in terms of a month. Obviously we highlighted last week or the last meeting of the meeting before that the ARC grant funds were deposited in the bank account. So we can count those as revenue in March, took them off of our balance sheet. The one thing you'll notice liabilities, accounts payable estimate, because obviously I don't have quite all the bills totaled yet. We did gray bar caught up on some prior contractors invoices. So I saw that total and it was 600 some thousand, but that's really because of prior invoices from the winter that are finally getting, we're finally getting billed for. So not because of current work, but because of past work. And that's the major couple items. Any questions?
All right.
Maybe
we
you might
should-
go right forward to the next slide. Is that the chart?
I only have through February. Was there an update for March?
No, there should be an updated one. Did it not come through? I
Okay.
did it, Dave. Oh shoot. Dave, can you go to the SharePoint?
Yes.
Because it's in the finance folder.
Let's see if I can get to it.
I thought I copied it in, but must be I missed it.
Finance and vendors, or is there another finance?
Nope, up in the finance internal sub.
Those hidden folders, which of the,
In the monthly DF reports. You want me to get it?
which tab?
Should be 325 operating.
I don't have 325 operating. I have 325 financial.
Do you want to go on to somebody else's and I'll get it pulled up?
Yeah, I don't have that file. I don't have that folder. That
Okay, I'll go find it. You can go on to another one.
all right. I think next up was sales. Tracy, I updated this from our conversation or from our work yesterday.
Yeah, and I had a meeting. I just want to make sure everybody knows I had a meeting with the gentleman Reggie Bloomfield Brown from the Mott Road Trailer Park. It was very interesting. He gave me a tour of the entire park. I know what we need to do there, but it's not designed for us to actually go in there. It's in the green zone. There are 24 people in the trailer park. He's like, yeah, everybody here wants it. We can't get to them. So it's kind of on hold for right this minute. I met out there with Eric as well and went over everything with him. So I know what's got to be done, but we have to wait for Vantage. And their concern is we don't want to do this and then have to come back there and do it again. So I understand that. We're just going to have to wait for a little bit before we go getting involved with that project. We also have, I think there's 56 people on the landlord agreement page. And we have 30 of them, I think, signed up now or something like that. So, yeah, 31 are signed up. So we can move forward in a whole lot of projects. We just got to get there.
Gotcha.
And also, Dave and I met yesterday, stopped at the library and talked with that lady that is in charge there about the apartments on 8 Library Street, which is part of the Library Association. And she said they had a meeting last night. I don't know how that went. It'll be interesting to see how that turned out. We have, I think there's 4 people in that apartment building that are services available. They've signed up, they want it, but we got to have the agreement signed before we can move forward.
Yeah, I think the other thing is she was also interested in having service at the library itself.
Right. And something else interesting that she said yesterday, and Dave and I were like, huh? She said the E-rate was going to go away, which that's going to affect a whole bunch of people. The school, George Junior Republic, TC3, I think they all use E-rate for their services. So that's the first I'd heard about that. That's something new to me.
Yeah, Congress isn't they're not funding it anymore.
Yeah, I mean, we showed her the card for the services for the library, and she was like, "Well, I definitely needed the highest tier, which would be $3,000 a year." And all of a sudden, it's like, oh, for a library, that seems like a lot of money, but what do they have now? I think right now that's for 2 gig at our commercial tier. Right now they have 100 meg is their current. So like they probably would be fine with our lowest commercial tier, which would not be $3,000 a year. So she took that as I think it's a good sign, a little bit of education on how powerful our highest tier is. 2 gigs a lot. They are providing a lot of free internet in the library for 100 meg per month service that they're paying for right now.
And right now they're not paying anything because it's coming from E-rate. So anything that we charge is going to be substantially more than they're paying.
That's also true. Yeah. I'll reach out to her either today or on Monday to see. She only has like another month left before she retires, but we'll try to see if we can at least get an update on where they are, what kind of questions they have about moving forward. Well, it was a really positive day yesterday. As much as everything's slowing down on construction, we still have almost 1,800 parcels in the green zone, including a lot of commercial properties that can and could and should sign up. So we're working our way through those. Thanks, Tracy. Tracy, is this up to date, this inventory slide? Or is there anything on here we should think about?
I'm sorry, say that again, Dave.
Is this inventory slide up to date, or is there anything we should think about on this slide?
I think it's up to date. Right now, there are no issues with anything as far as installations. Depending on how fast we get started again, we'll get, make sure we have stock. The other issue was we're still trying to decide what we're gonna do with, the Sienna.
Right.
As you can see, we have 480 ONUs on hand, so we probably should plan on using them up before we do anything else. I don't think we can turn them in or send them back.
Yeah, that's yet another project for Vantage to evaluate, support us with, is making a change from Sienna to Calyx. There's pros and cons. Scott Brennan and I met with them last week, maybe it was even earlier this week on Monday, to discuss like when and how would we make that change on top of everything else we're working through. But for now, we have enough Sienna to manage where we are today. I don't know if we have anyone from Integrity on for report on customer service. I think the biggest thing to call out is there was an outage, 34 inbound help desk calls due to the outage that lasted just under 2 hours back on March 16th. Following that, it seemed like there were some people who had issues with their connections. I think every single one of them, except for one, was fixed by unplugging and replugging in their devices. So people are like, hey, I'm having problems, not fast enough, or something's happening. Unplug, plug it back in, that probably will fix it. There was one person who did that and it didn't work, and it turned out they had their own separate router on their network that they did not identify for like 3 days. And then on the 4th, they're like, oh, I have my own router that has been messing up everything. It wasn't you guys at all. So even though we had like daily troubleshooting with this customer, helping them out, it was their own equipment on their network that was causing problems. Network operations, pretty busy month. There was a change to the from the outage configuration change. We fixed that. We've tested failover with both providers, and that was successful. So now if there is a failure on either side, we're good. We changed our backhaul provider from First Light to Cogent. Started on March 27th. There were no issues. That finished on Monday. The central office Ethernet switches, we've added 2 of those. This is needed to connect the servers and various network equipment using copper instead of fiber. There was a little bit of cost to that to firm up that part of the CO. And as I mentioned earlier this week, Scott from Integrity, who manages our network, met with Vantage and me to begin the communication of what our network looks like. Vantage is going to do a network audit and work on understanding what we have today to extend the network south into Caroline. Scott had a prior commitment for this meeting time, so he couldn't be here to report on this. Any questions on network operations?
I'd like to see that
Yeah.
network audit.
Cool. Yeah, as soon as we have it done, we'll share with the team.
Yeah, I'm really curious about the shift to copper rather than fiber there. It was working with fiber, or they added more copper?
I'll have to ask Scott. Pretty.
Okay.
Yeah,
This-
ask that.
That's strange.
All right. Another new slide, HR, admin, and insurance. As you can imagine, administrative resources are being stretched thin with the amount of requests from New York State on MIP, plus all of the other parts of managing the project, billing, invoicing, AR, AP. We had already budgeted hiring a part-time accounting clerk to help support the project in 2025. We said sometime in the spring of 2025. Amanda and I talked earlier this week. It's now the spring of 2025. We need to begin the search and ideally have someone join the team in May or in June. Like I said, it was in the budget, it was in the plan. Now we have to make this happen, and we want to start to bring the broadband committee into accountability and know like this is part of what we're doing as part of our plan, but help us be accountable to this hire. In addition, part of this on the admin, Department of Labor for MIP has requested that all of our subcontractors report job titles and demographic information for the project through March 31st of 2025. So all of our subcontractors will need to complete this paperwork. Amanda emailed them all yesterday. It's due by April 1st, Amanda, or May 1st?
It is due April 30th because the reporting period ended March 31st. So it is due April 30th. Yeah. April 1st already had passed. We made it due from our subcontractors the 22nd to give time because I'm quite sure we have to consolidate them all into one report back to the Department of Labor.
Yeah, we have, I believe, 9 subcontractors that we've asked for their information on for this Department of Labor reporting. Like everything else within the MIP project, this is built into the GDA. It's one of the things that are required. So once we sign the GDA, they'll ask us to have already done this on time, even though we haven't signed the GDA yet. My computer is not letting me go to presentation mode, so we'll do it from here. The last one is insurance. We are searching for an insurance provider for the network. Amanda, you want to give any brief update on what we have been doing for insurance and where we are today?
So in the past, our insurance agent for the town, insurance provider, has no way to cover the fiber, the equipment, and so we kind of just lumped it under the town, but it really wasn't covered specifically. Obviously with MIP, as we grow, we said that's not a good idea. So we reached out to our current insurance agent. He didn't really have any, it's kind of out of their knowledge base, I guess I want to say. So Dave reached out to a couple other ISPs, Midwest, Dave, I don't remember exactly where. They suggested 2 different insurance agents. I've reached out to both of those. They've sent me the applications. So we are in the process of getting insurance, and they were very much like, oh yeah, fiber under the ground. We usually suggest this much per mile. Yeah, you have equipment, how many do you have? So some of that basic information we have to get back to them. So that is in process. It's gonna be a busy month. So we're moving forward with that.
Cool. Yeah, we definitely want to make sure we are covered insurance-wise.
Yes. Dave, I updated that one slide. It's not as pretty as before, but it's there. I did just want to mention our operating for the month, actually not counting installations. Obviously, installations is still a separate bucket. But the our revenue is now meeting our operating expenses. So I did want to just update that. I'm sorry I did update it, but you know how sometimes computers just decide to fluke us once in a while.
Operating expenses is the red line. And
yeah, operating is the red line. The blue is residential and business revenue.
All right, any questions on admin, insurance, HR, or monthly revenue?
That's really great to see. Thank you.
All right, we'll do quick on the last couple, which are total under contract. We talked about that already. fewer requests. We're at 34 new requests in the month of March, half of what we had in the month of February, from February 1st to February 29th or February 28th, which is half of what we had in January after that big mailer. Traffic on the site also down a little bit, but still over 1,200 sessions this month on the website. So what are we doing about that with regard to marketing? We did our door-to-door campaign, talked about that, very positive. We also did the community connections event to get our name out there. And finally, we did or are about to do a new spring 2025 postcard campaign. This will go to every green zone address that does not have service today, is not a current customer, and who we did not get a rejection from the first time we mailed them. So it's about 1,000 addresses, or we have 1,000 cards to send out. These cards have been updated. It has a quote from our customers about how awesome the service is. So this is as we move past the low-hanging fruit, the early adopters in the community who are like, ooh, fiber, I want it. Now we're getting to the next group, group population is like, all right, now some of my neighbors have it, they like it, now I'll sign up. So the goal of this is to tap into those customers that are potential customers who weren't ready at the beginning, but now that their neighbors have it, they're ready to sign up. Finally, on marketing, we updated the website, really focusing on the contact and support pages. So there are multiple avenues and pathways to get to us within contact and support. Any questions on marketing, the reach, slide 26, or this one, slide 27?
The only other idea I had, Dave, was that when we did the town bills, we were able to add a little blurb in there about the Dryden fiber. I wonder if you could do, if it's possible, to do the same thing with the school bills that'll be coming out in September, potentially, just an idea. And the other thing is, we know what fiber is, but I'm wondering if we're clear to the customers, because when you run the spectrum, it's a shared network, I believe. And a lot of it's over copper, not over, fiber optics. Maybe we can emphasize that difference, being really that you're getting a connection from here all the way back to the, you've got an individual connection, basically, is what we're giving till it dumps off to the internet. And the speeds, of course. So, and the low latency, which we also have pretty low latency when you compare it to, I believe, to cable. So
Well,
I don't know if we could work that into something somewhere, but just another thing that crossed my mind. So
yeah, we have an article about switching to fiber from another provider. It had been from cable or from Spectrum. I took out all the mentions of a particular provider, but switching, but it doesn't necessarily say
why it's better
versus coax.
Yeah.
So that could be its own separate article that we could do
Yeah.
this month and give us something else to share with the community. It was useful both at the community connections event and door to door to be able to reference the switching article on the website. We're like, well, I have another provider that has phone and TV. How would I make the switch? Like, good question. TridentFiber.com. It's the #1 blog post on the website. Just go there and it'll give you the step-by-step on how to switch. That's a good suggestion because people might not know what's the difference between fiber and coax or copper.
I think it's also great to have something new there regularly because it, drives traffic to the website.
Very much, yeah. Cool. That's it for this part of the meeting. We were now at 11:40, so we're over. The other items I had were status of the polls. The key thing here I already mentioned was we've restarted 2 of the permits, which is Dryden 21 and Dryden 22 with Labella. We should review the minutes from January 3rd and then have a couple other business conversation items, but we can do those when we meet in 2 weeks on the 18th. I do want to ask for a brief executive session with the committee, but before we do that, any other open questions for the public before we go to the executive session? All right, well, thank you all for being here. It helps the whole project to have this monthly check-in on what we did last month, as well as the twice a month meeting with the broadband committee to just bring everything together, let you know where we're at, where we're seeing things that are surprises, give you an update on what's going on with the project as a whole. So thanks for being here. It makes the whole thing a lot better when there's more people involved to have that accountability. So thank you for everyone, and for the broadband committee, if you can stay on, we'll do an executive session with something pending litigation.
Great. Thanks, Dave. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
you.
everybody. Have a good day.
Bye.